This is a story about ambition, determination, and an unyielding pursuit of dreams. Jordan, a young black student, has always stood out not just for his academic brilliance, but for his relentless dedication to a future he's envisioned since he was a child. A future that hinges on hard work, discipline, and the faith that his efforts will be recognized. He has poured his heart into his studies, determined to leave his mark and forge a path for himself in the world. But not every path is as straightforward as it seems. At a certain school, known to many for its rigorous standards and history of producing high achievers, there exists a shadow. No one openly acknowledges a bias that works in silence, often unseen but always felt. And for students like Jordan, this shadow looms even larger. Mr. Reynolds, a teacher whose years of experience have earned him respect in some circles, stands a gatekeeper of knowledge and power. He is stern, exacting, and has been trusted to shape the minds of students year after year. Yet, for Jordan, there is something more to Mr. Reynolds' authority. Behind the respect he commands lies a subtle but potent reality, one that's deeply rooted and rarely questioned. For Jordan, the challenges aren't just in the assignments, exams, or long nights of studying. There's a different test with unspoken rules, where certain students seem to face obstacles invisible to others. As Jordan navigates his way through academic life, he begins to feel the quiet weight of expectations that feel different from what others seem to experience. This isn't just a story about grades or school politics. It's about the stark, often uncomfortable truth faced by those who are held to a different standard, not because of their capabilities, but because of who they are. And as Jordan pushes forward, he will come face to face with an injustice he never anticipated. In a place that promises opportunity and growth, Jordan's dedication will meet resistance. His aspirations will face barriers, and he will soon realize that, for some, success comes with an entirely different set of challenges. This is Jordan's story, a story of resilience, courage, and the quiet, powerful fight against a system that sometimes fails to see everyone equally. The school sits as a respected institution, priding itself on its history of academic rigor, its alumni who have gone on to make great achievements, and its unwavering commitment to the pursuit of knowledge. But beneath this reputation lies another story, a less visible one that echoes in the experiences of certain students. For years, students from different backgrounds have walked these halls, each bringing their own dreams and determination. Yet, some face an unseen barrier, a subtle but steady undercurrent that has followed the institution's reputation. It is in this environment that Jordan finds himself, a place where excellence is promised, but equality remains elusive. Jordan, a young man driven by a dream, stands at the edge of his future. As he walks into the school each morning, he carries not just his books and assignments, but also his vision of a better tomorrow. Known by his peers and teachers alike for his diligence and curiosity, Jordan is the kind of student who refuses to give less than his best. His academic record speaks for itself, and his goals are clear: a college scholarship, a career, and a life built on the foundation of his hard work. But across the room stands Mr. Reynolds, a seasoned teacher whose reputation precedes him. For years, he's been an authority figure, praised by some for his unyielding standards and feared by others for his strict approach. To his colleagues, he's simply a seasoned educator. To certain students, however, he is something else entirely. In his eyes, students like Jordan don't always receive the benefit of the doubt, and in his hands, grades carry weight beyond mere numbers. For Jordan, this year will be unlike any other, a journey that will test not only his knowledge but his belief in fairness, his patience, and his resolve. In a world where hard work should be the measure of one's success, what happens when unseen forces interfere? As Jordan embarks on his academic journey, he will face an obstacle unlike any he has encountered before, an injustice that strikes at the heart of his dreams, in a place where he once believed he'd be safe. This is not just about a grade or a teacher's opinion. It's about a quiet but deeply felt struggle for recognition, respect, and the right to pursue one's potential, unencumbered by prejudice. Stay with us as we unravel Jordan's journey, a story of ambition, adversity, and the undeniable will to overcome. From the moment he steps into the classroom, Jordan's presence is unmistakable. He sits in the front row, eager to engage, his hand frequently raised, his voice confident. History, to him, is not just another subject, it's a passion, a doorway into understanding the world and his place within it. His assignments are detailed, meticulously researched, and he never misses a chance to contribute his thoughts during discussions. His teachers have noted his drive, his discipline, and his curiosity, a student who doesn't just meet expectations but strives to exceed them. Jordan's dreams reach beyond the classroom walls. College is not just a goal, it's his future, his foundation for everything he aspires to achieve. He's aiming for a scholarship to a prestigious university, a chance to expand his knowledge and begin the life he's always envisioned. To him, every grade is critical, every assignment a stepping stone toward that dream. He's aware of the pressure, but it drives him forward, each success a small victory in his journey. But not everyone seems to share in Jordan's aspirations. Mr. Reynolds, his history teacher, has watched Jordan's progress with a demeanor that appears calm yet hints at something more. During class, when Jordan shares an insight or asks a challenging question, there's a subtle reaction, a raised eyebrow, a faint smirk, a momentary silence before he responds. Interesting thought, Jordan, but don't you think that's a bit simplistic? He might say, his voice carrying just enough doubt to undercut Jordan's confidence. The comments start small, almost imperceptible. Perhaps Jordan imagines it at first a slight, a raised question that feels dismissive, a piece of feedback that seems harsher than warranted. But as the weeks go by, these moments begin to add up. After a particularly well-prepared presentation on the Reconstruction era, Jordan stands in front of the class, awaiting feedback, his heart racing in anticipation. Mr. Reynolds nods, and for a moment it seems he might offer genuine praise. Instead, he remarks, "Well, that was ambitious, Jordan. I just wonder if you truly grasped the complexity of it all." The implication lingers, heavy and unsettling. To others, these comments may seem like constructive criticism, the kind of guidance any teacher might give. But to Jordan, they feel like tiny, deliberate punctures in his self-assurance, hints that no matter how hard he tries, his work will always be questioned. Mr. Reynolds' feedback is never overtly critical, never outright dismissive. Yet, it consistently falls short of validation, casting doubt in ways that are difficult to confront. Jordan begins to feel it in small ways, the reluctance to raise his hand quite as eagerly, the second-guessing of his own insights. What once felt like a place of growth now feels like a place of quiet judgment. He wonders silently if it's just his imagination or something more, if the teacher he hoped would guide him is, in fact, the very obstacle he'll have to overcome. For Jordan, this isn't just about a grade or a bit of criticism. It's a question of respect, of fairness, of what it means to be truly seen for his potential. Each interaction with Mr. Reynolds adds a new layer of tension, an unspoken challenge to his dreams. And as he continues to work tirelessly toward his future, one question lingers at the back of his mind. What more does he have to prove? As the semester unfolds, Mr. Reynolds announces the major history project, a comprehensive assignment that will count for a significant portion of each student's grade. This isn't just any project. It's a deep dive into a historical period, an opportunity for students to showcase their understanding, critical thinking, and research skills. To Jordan, it feels like the perfect chance to bring all his hard work, passion, and knowledge together. He immediately knows this is his moment. The topic he chooses is ambitious, challenging, and complex. But Jordan sees this as more than just an assignment. It's a stepping stone toward his future. He dreams of impressing not just Mr. Reynolds, but also the college admissions committees that will one day review his transcript. He wants to create something that shows his intellectual potential, something worthy of his ambitions. Night after night, Jordan is at his desk, surrounded by stacks of books, highlighted notes, and pages of carefully written analysis. His room becomes a miniature library, filled with historical texts and primary sources. He goes beyond the basic requirements, diving into lesser-known stories and drawing connections that might not be immediately obvious, but which he feels are essential to understanding the full picture. Hours turn into late nights, and late nights turn into early mornings. He pours himself into every detail, pushing through fatigue with a determination that only grows stronger. On the day of his presentation, Jordan stands confidently in front of the class, armed with meticulously prepared slides, charts, and evidence. His voice is steady, his thoughts well organized. As he speaks, his passion shines through. He's done his research, weaving together facts, analysis, and historical context with a clarity that commands attention. Every word he says is a testament to his dedication, every point carefully constructed to make a powerful argument. When he finishes, there's a brief silence in the room, a moment of quiet recognition from his classmates of the depth of his work. Jordan stands there, catching his breath, heart racing, awaiting the feedback he hopes will validate his effort. He looks to Mr. Reynolds, expecting a nod of approval, perhaps even a rare word of praise. But Mr. Reynolds' expression remains unchanged, his face giving nothing away. Finally, Mr. Reynolds speaks. "That was an interesting attempt, Jordan. You certainly covered a lot of ground," he says, his tone neutral, almost bored. He goes on, "But I wonder if you really managed to capture the nuances of the topic. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in the details without grasping the bigger picture." Jordan's heart sinks. What he'd hoped would be a moment of triumph feels hollow, replaced by a vague sense of inadequacy. He had worked so hard, given his best effort, yet his teacher's response is indifferent, offering neither genuine praise nor constructive feedback. Mr. Reynolds' words cut through Jordan's confidence, casting doubt over everything he's poured into this project. Mr. Reynolds moves on to the next student without further acknowledgement, as if Jordan's hard work were nothing more than an average effort. Jordan returns to his seat, feeling a mixture of frustration, confusion, and disbelief. For the first time, he begins to wonder if his best will ever be good enough, if his efforts will always be viewed through a lens that finds fault rather than value. And for Jordan, this project, a culmination of his dedication and vision, feels like more than just a school assignment. It's a reminder that sometimes hard work isn't judged by merit, but by perceptions far beyond his control. The day the grades are posted, Jordan's anticipation is mixed with nervousness, but he reassures himself. He's given everything to this project, poured hours into research, and crafted an argument that went beyond the surface. He expects his hard work to pay off. But when he finally sees his grade, the air is knocked from his lungs, a failing mark. Underneath the grade is a brief comment from Mr. Reynolds: "Lacks depth. Fails to demonstrate a comprehensive understanding." That's it. No specific feedback, no constructive criticism, just a vague dismissal of everything Jordan poured into this project. Confused and deeply hurt, Jordan sits there, rereading the words, hoping he's somehow misunderstood. He had expected a challenge from Mr. Reynolds, maybe a critical review, but not this. After class, Jordan decides to approach Mr. Reynolds. He carefully gathers his thoughts, determined to remain respectful. "Mr. Reynolds, I just wanted to ask about my grade on the project. I thought I'd put in a lot of effort, and I'd like to understand where I went wrong so I can improve," he says, his voice steady but full of hope for some explanation. Mr. Reynolds barely glances at him. "Well, Jordan," he replies, his tone cold, "your project simply didn't meet the depth I expect from my students. You covered the basics, but you missed the complexity. Perhaps next time, focus less on quantity and more on true analysis." Jordan is stunned. He had gone out of his way to include multiple perspectives, layered interpretations, and a level of detail he thought would show his dedication. His mind races, recalling all the sources he cited, the late nights he spent perfecting every paragraph. I tried to address the complexities," Jordan insists, his voice faltering slightly. "I put a lot of effort into this." But Mr. Reynolds dismisses him with a shake of his head. "Effort doesn't necessarily mean quality, Jordan," he says simply. Then, almost as an afterthought, he adds, "I'm sure you'll learn as you progress. Sometimes it's best to know when to stay within your limits." Jordan walks away, feeling a hollow ache where his confidence once was. The unfair grade doesn't just sting, it carries far-reaching consequences. This project, weighted heavily in the course, has a significant impact on his overall GPA. With college applications on the horizon, every grade counts, and now his dreams of a scholarship feel threatened. He knows his GPA is critical to securing his future, and now all of his hard work feels precariously close to slipping away. As the days pass, doubt begins to seep in. Jordan rereads his project, questioning every line, wondering if he truly missed something, or if he's simply not as capable as he thought. Had he fallen short in ways he couldn't see? The pride he once felt in his work is slowly replaced by confusion, frustration, and a growing sense of betrayal. He can't shake the feeling that his efforts are being measured by standards beyond his control. For Jordan, this grade is more than a mark on paper. It's a shadow cast over his future, his ambitions, and his sense of self-worth. And as he grapples with these emotions, he begins to see his path forward clouded by forces he may not have the power to change. The sting of the failing grade continues to haunt Jordan. But it's not just the grade itself that eats at him, it's the sense that he's been unjustly treated. He knows he worked harder than most, dedicated more time, and sacrificed more sleep than he cares to admit. This wasn't just a poor grade, it felt personal, a denial of his efforts and his worth. In the days that follow, Jordan reaches out to the people who know him best, his closest friends and his family. They listen, nodding with understanding as he recounts the events. They've seen him put in the work, seen him struggle late into the night to perfect his project, and they know that something doesn't add up. "This isn't right," one of his friends tells him firmly. "You have to say something. If you don't, who will?" His mother, too, encourages him to speak up. "You've done nothing wrong, Jordan. If you believe you've been treated unfairly, you have every right to stand up for yourself." Their support gives him the courage to take the next step. Jordan knows what he has to do. The system may be stacked against him, but he won't back down without a fight. He makes an appointment with the school principal, hoping that someone in a position of authority will finally understand the gravity of the situation. When the day comes, Jordan walks into the principal's office, armed with a grade sheet, his project, and a determination that now feels like the only thing keeping him grounded. The principal listens attentively as Jordan explains the situation, outlining the hours of work he put in, the lack of meaningful feedback, and the unfair grade he received. "I know this is frustrating, Jordan," the principal begins, "but sometimes grades can be subjective. Every teacher has their own expectations and interpretations." Jordan listens, the words stinging as they echo what Mr. Reynolds had said, that somehow his work just wasn't up to standard, even though he knows deep down it was. "But I did everything I could," Jordan insists. "I put in the work, the research, the analysis. This grade doesn't reflect that." The principal sighs, leaning back in their chair. "I understand, Jordan. But you must also understand that Mr. Reynolds has been here for many years. He's well respected, and his assessments are considered fair by most. This might just be a difference in opinion between you and him. You should respect his authority and move on." The words hit Jordan like a wall. His hopes of finding justice in the administration are quickly dashed. The principal's reluctance to challenge Mr. Reynolds is clear, and it feels as if his entire complaint is being dismissed as inconsequential, a minor disagreement in the grand scheme of things. There's no acknowledgement of the bias he's experiencing, no understanding of the emotional and academic toll it's taking on him. The principal's suggestion to move on feels like a slap in the face. It's not just the grade, it's the system itself that seems intent on ignoring his voice. But Jordan isn't ready to give up yet. As he leaves the principal's office, the weight of the conversation presses down on him. But it also fuels something deeper, his resolve. He knows that to make any real change, he'll need more than just words. He'll need evidence. If the system won't listen to him, he'll have to prove that he's being unfairly treated. Jordan begins to keep track of his interactions with Mr. Reynolds, documenting every comment, every instance where he feels belittled or dismissed. He gathers his research, his notes, and his project in detail, preparing for what might be a long and uphill battle. He begins to record conversations with his friends, classmates, and even other teachers who have witnessed the way Mr. Reynolds treats him. Jordan knows that if he wants to have any hope of being heard, he needs concrete proof that what he's facing is more than just a difference in opinion, it's a pattern of unfair treatment, one that can't be ignored anymore. As the weight of the situation continues to press on him, Jordan's frustration turns to action. He knows that to be taken seriously, he needs more than just his word against Mr. Reynolds. If he's going to stand a chance, he has to build a solid, undeniable case that proves the bias and unfair treatment he's endured. But to do that, he first needs to look beyond his own experience. Jordan begins his investigation by asking around. He talks to friends, classmates, and even former students who once sat in Mr. Reynolds' class. It doesn't take long before a troubling pattern begins to emerge. His peers, mostly black students, tell him stories that echo his own. A fellow student shares how their final project was graded harshly despite putting in hours of work, their ideas dismissed without explanation. Another recalls how Mr. Reynolds had once made a disparaging remark in class, implying that black students were less prepared than their peers. As Jordan listens to these stories, a chilling realization sets in: this isn't just about one bad grade. This is part of a much bigger issue. As the stories pile up, Jordan begins to gather more concrete evidence. He reaches out to other current students who are willing to speak up, carefully documenting their experiences. Some are reluctant to come forward, scared of retaliation or feeling like their voices won't be heard. But Jordan is persistent. He reassures them that they're not alone in this, that their stories matter. Jordan also approaches former students who had experienced similar issues with Mr. Reynolds in the past. They share their own accounts of biased treatment. Some had been unfairly graded on assignments. Others recalled incidents where Mr. Reynolds' comments about black students seemed unnecessarily critical or dismissive. Each conversation adds another layer to his growing case, and soon, a disturbing picture begins to form. With each testimony and piece of evidence, Jordan starts to feel a glimmer of hope. He's not just fighting for himself anymore, he's fighting for every student who's ever been unfairly judged. His heart beats faster as he organizes his findings, meticulously compiling statements from students and written records of the discriminatory actions. He includes copies of his own project, feedback from Mr. Reynolds, and notes from conversations with other teachers who had observed his treatment. Jordan's report begins to take shape, a comprehensive document detailing the pattern of bias Mr. Reynolds has demonstrated over the years. It's more than just a collection of complaints. It's a factual, well-documented case that paints a clear picture of how this teacher has treated black students differently from their peers. He even adds a timeline, highlighting the repeated instances of unfair treatment, tying them back to his own experiences and those of others. The gravity of his work hits him as he steps back and looks at the folder in front of him as evidence, his argument, his fight for justice. It's no longer just about one grade or one teacher. It's about the broader issue of racism in education, about giving a voice to those who have been silenced, overlooked, and dismissed for far too long. But as Jordan gathers his final pieces of evidence, the reality of what he's up against starts to sink in. The system, the very institution he's been a part of, will not give up its power easily. The stakes are high, and he knows the risks. But he is undeterred. He's come too far to turn back now. The truth will come to light, no matter the obstacles in his way. The day of the confrontation arrives. Jordan feels the weight of everything that has led up to this moment: the sleepless nights of research, the hours spent speaking to other students, the painstaking documentation he's compiled. Today, he's not just walking into the principal's office to voice a complaint. He's presenting a case that's backed by undeniable evidence, proof of a pattern of injustice that has persisted unchecked for far too long. Armed with his meticulously organized file, Jordan enters the principal's office, where both the principal and Mr. Reynolds are waiting. The air feels thick with tension. Mr. Reynolds sits with a defensive posture, his arms crossed, his eyes avoiding Jordan's. The principal is poised, though there's a subtle unease in their gaze. And sitting quietly in the corner, a school board representative has been summoned to observe the meeting. Jordan begins, his voice steady but full of conviction. "I'm here because I believe I've been unfairly graded, and I have reason to believe that this isn't just about me. It's part of a larger issue that's been going on for a long time." He lays out the evidence before them: testimonies from other students, records of incidents where Mr. Reynolds' behavior was dismissive and prejudiced, and detailed accounts of how black students have been treated differently in the classroom. He doesn't just talk, he lets the documents speak for themselves. The evidence is overwhelming, undeniable. Mr. Reynolds shifts in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. As Jordan continues to present the facts, the teacher interjects, his tone defensive. "I've been teaching for over 20 years, and I've never been accused of such things," he says, his voice rising slightly. If Jordan feels disrespected, perhaps that's because he didn't meet the standard of the assignment. Maybe he's just upset because he didn't put in the level of effort I expected. This isn't about race. This is about academic performance. Jordan's jaw tightens, but he remains composed. He's heard these excuses before: the shifting of blame, the refusal to acknowledge the reality of the situation. "With all due respect, Mr. Reynolds," Jordan replies, "this is about more than my grade. This is about how black students are consistently held to a different standard. It's about how we're dismissed when we do our best, how our efforts are minimized or ignored because of our race. This isn't just my issue, it's a pattern that's been happening for years." The room falls silent. Mr. Reynolds doesn't respond, his face flushed with frustration. The principal remains quiet, reading through the evidence carefully. But Jordan isn't finished. "I didn't just come here to complain. I came here to show that what's happening is wrong, and it's time for it to be addressed." As the meeting progresses, the atmosphere begins to shift. The school board representative, who has been silent until now, asks questions, probing deeper into the history of Mr. Reynolds' teaching and his treatment of students. Jordan answers calmly but firmly, giving examples and pointing out discrepancies in Mr. Reynolds' behavior. Slowly, the weight of the evidence begins to sink in. Word of Jordan's fight begins to spread beyond the confines of the meeting room. Parents of current and former students, who had long suspected something was amiss, begin to rally behind Jordan's cause. A petition is circulated. Local media outlets pick up the story, shining a light on the growing controversy. As pressure mounts, the administration can no longer ignore the facts before them. Days later, after a thorough investigation, the school announces its decision. The administration confirms that Mr. Reynolds has been found guilty of biased treatment toward black students. Though the decision is met with mixed reactions, the school takes action. Mr. Reynolds is reprimanded, and a formal suspension is imposed. Though not every student is satisfied with the outcome, Jordan has achieved something that no one can deny. His fight for justice has exposed a deep-rooted issue within the school and forced change. For Jordan, the resolution is bittersweet. While the consequences for Mr. Reynolds are a step in the right direction, he knows that the fight for fairness is far from over. But in this moment, as he watches the story unfold and hears the support of his community echoing behind him, Jordan realizes that he has made a difference not just for himself, but for every student who has ever been silenced or overlooked. The truth has been heard, and that in itself is a victory. In the days that follow, Jordan's world begins to shift. The weight of the fight, the long hours of documentation, the countless moments of self-doubt slowly, it all starts to pay off. Mr. Reynolds faces the consequences of his actions, and Jordan, with a sense of quiet vindication, watches as his grade is corrected. The failing mark is removed from his record, replaced with the grade he truly earned, a grade that reflects the effort, dedication, and intellectual rigor he put into his project. More importantly, his scholarship prospects are restored. His dreams of college are no longer hanging by a thread. His hard work and resilience have triumphed. But the emotional journey has taken its toll. The relief of seeing the system finally correct itself doesn't erase the frustration, the isolation, and the sense of betrayal Jordan felt throughout this process. He reflects on the countless sleepless nights he spent questioning his own worth, wondering if the system would ever truly support him. The emotional weight of fighting for his dignity and fairness has left its mark. But as Jordan stands at the crossroads of this battle, he realizes something vital. He's not just a survivor of this experience. He is stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to continue his fight for justice. Jordan's story is not one of isolated triumph. It is a testament to the power of resilience, to the belief that when faced with injustice, the only way forward is to speak the truth, even when it feels like the world is against you. He understands now that no battle for justice is ever easy, but that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting. As he walks through the school's halls once again, Jordan knows that his victory isn't just his alone. The support from his friends, his family, and his community helped fuel his strength. Their voices, alongside his own, created the momentum needed to break through a wall of silence. Jordan knows that his story will serve as a reminder for others that no matter how difficult the road, the fight for fairness and equity must continue. As the camera pulls back, we hear Jordan's voice in reflection. I've learned that it's not enough to just be good. You have to be willing to stand up for what's right. And sometimes, that means standing alone, even when it feels like no one is listening. But when you stand firm, when you keep pushing for justice, change happens. I won't stop here. And I hope others won't either. Because this fight, our fight, isn't over. The final shot lingers on Jordan as he walks confidently out of the building, a young man shaped by hardship but unbroken. His journey is just beginning, but now, the world seems a little more within his reach. The screen fades to black, and the credits roll over, a message for every student whose voice has been silenced, whose efforts have been dismissed. This story is for you. Keep fighting. Keep speaking out. The future depends on it.